Opportunity is the friend of desperation. Today, you're going to hear about a man's desperation. You're going to hear about his opportunities, and you're going to hear about his crime. First-degree murder and arson. You're going to hear how on July 20th, 2014, Joshua Wallace, the defendant, took his desperation and turned it into an opportunity to take revenge. He did this by firebombing Megan and Tamara Eigenbrott's home. As the house was engulfed in flames, Megan Eigenbrott desperately tried to get her daughter out of the house, but she couldn't save her that night. The flames of the defendant's revenge burned too great. Megan was unable to make it out. Megan was able to make it out. Tamara, or Tammy, as her mom called her, wasn't. The death of Tammy was brought about by the actions of this defendant and him taking the desperation he felt and seizing at the opportunities. The opportunities that you will see here today is the trail in the woods that he used to access the house, his weapon of opportunity, and his target. My name is Enoch, and along with my co-counsel, Colin Spangler, we represent the state. And today, we're going to show you all of this through the evidence and testimony presented in this courtroom, and we will show it to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant on July 20th, 2014 intentionally set fire to Megan Eigenbrott's house, and that because of this crime, Tamara Eigenbrott, Tammy, lost her life. Because of the nature of this case, it is imperative that we all understand that this burden of beyond a reasonable doubt revolves around the quality of the evidence, not the quantity. What has helped me since first starting my job as a prosecutor to understand this burden is just simply think about the scales of justice. Quality evidence puts more weight onto the scale. And who determines that weight? You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. When you hear and see the evidence from right here in this witness stand today about the defendant's hiding spot near Megan and Tammy's home, his weapon of choice, a Molotov cocktail, and why he selected his target, even after all Megan and her family had done for him, you will assign a weight to that evidence and place it on the scale. After we present our case, the defense will have an opportunity to present some evidence themselves. And by all means, they're not required to do that, but we expect that they will here today. And when they present that evidence, listen to it and see what weight you want to put to the evidence they're trying to present to you. Now, why would the defendant want to firebomb Megan and Tamara's home? Today we'll learn about the defendant's desperation. We call this his motive. The reason why he wanted to harm the Eigenbrotts, the reason why he went to their home on the night of July 20th is that 3 weeks before this crime, Megan ended the relationship she had with the defendant. Yes, Megan used to date the defendant. She opened her home to him, opened her life, opened her daughter's life to the defendant. The defendant lived next door prior to this relationship. They started dating, and Megan even opened up her home and let the defendant come move in. But 3 weeks before the defendant set fire to Megan's house, Megan asked the defendant to move out. It just wasn't working out. Megan moved on. She started seeing other people and continuing with her life until July 19th. On that day, the defendant showed Megan and Tammy that he hadn't moved on. He called, he texted, time and time again. He would leave messages. He did everything he could to continue to be in contact with Megan. When Megan rejected his desperate attempts, you'll learn that the defendant's response was to ask her to get the rest of his things out of her house. You'll hear how the defendant picked up his things around 8 o'clock, but that was not the only time the defendant was at Megan's house that night. Desperation kicked in. First opportunity, the trail behind the houses. You'll hear about his hiding spot in the woods, a trail leading from a nearby roadway, right to the defendant's old house. This dirt path led through the woods, and he used that trail to conceal his movement the night he set the fire. The defendant's plan to conceal his movements with this trail failed, however, as you'll hear later from Detective Dillinger, who found the defendant right near the head of the trail after the fire had been set. The detective will testify here today that he saw the defendant covered in mud, carrying a backpack with a flashlight, a steel reserve beer can in it, a lighter, and the defendant smelled of gasoline. Second opportunity, the firebombs, the Molotov cocktails. A Molotov cocktail is a glass bottle filled with some kind of accelerant, like gasoline. And then a wick is placed into that glass bottle, and you can use a piece of a t-shirt, for example. The wick is lit, and then the person throws the bottle at their target. What opportunities did the defendant have to make these? You'll hear from Detective Dillinger that he found the glass bottles on the path the defendant used, right near some empty steel reserve beer cans. What about the gas? You'll hear how the defendant used to live next door. This house remained empty after the defendant moved out. And what did the detective find in the crawl space? An empty gas can. Third opportunity. The defendant knew which room Megan lived in. You'll hear how he targeted that room in particular. However, Megan had rearranged her house after the breakup, trying to get a fresh start. The defendant targeted Megan's old room, which is Tammy's new room. And that is where Tammy's life ended on July 20th. Ladies and gentlemen, today, you're going to hear about a man's desperation. You're going to hear about his opportunities and finally his crime. Remember to apply the correct weight to the evidence presented. Remember the numerous opportunities the defendant used to commit this crime, and remember his desperation, his targeting of Megan, and his killing of Tammy Agnew. Our co-counsel, Colin Spangler, will come before you at the end of this trial, and we're going to ask you to return a verdict of guilty to the defendant for first-degree murder and arson. Thank you.
Defense?
May it please the court?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be great to be able to be in two places at one time? Think of all the things you could get done and all the places you could go. You could be in this jury box right now and also at home taking a nap or mowing your grass. But unfortunately for all of us, however much we may want to, we will never be able to be in two places at one time. That's what today's case is about, members of the jury. The state is going to ask you to believe that Mr. Wallace was in one place at the same time. All the evidence and eyewitness testimony puts him in a different place. As you just heard, the state has accused Josh of burning down Ms. Agnew-Rott's home. But the evidence and the eyewitness testimony we will present to you today will prove that he was more than 1.5 miles away in a neighboring town. And as we know, members of the jury, Mr. Wallace could simply not be in two different places at the same time. Good evening, members of the jury. I'm Clair, and along with my co-counsel, Liz Smith, we represent Josh Wallace. This is Josh. Josh is a hard-working young man who lives a normal life. He has a dog that he loves and an honest job as a landscaper. Now, the prosecution mentioned some of Josh's desperation and his search for opportunities, but the only thing Josh Wallace was desperate for was getting a better job and creating a successful, happy, fulfilled life. That was the only opportunity he was looking for, a new job. And on the day of July 19th of 2014, when Josh was trying to find that opportunity to get a better job so he could be more successful, he went to the Bass Pro Shop in Concord to talk to an acquaintance, Robert Saunders, about getting a job there. Mr. Saunders could not interview Josh right then, but asked him to meet up later to discuss the opportunity. Josh then went to Miss Egan-Brock's home to play with his dog. And after taking care of his dog for some time, he left and went to meet Mr. Saunders at a local establishment the next town over. They stayed talking until 2 a.m., where Josh left and started walking home, only to be stopped by Detective Dillinger. He cooperated with Detective Dillinger because when he found out what had happened to Ms. Egan-Brock, he wanted to help the police catch the person responsible as much as he could. But instead, Josh is here before you today, standing wrongly accused. The prosecution's utter lack of investigation and shoddy police work led them to simply the wrong conclusion. A conclusion where Josh Wallace would have had to have been capable of being in two places miles apart at the same moment. Today we'll bring you two witnesses. First, you'll hear from Robert Saunders, the man who Josh was trying to get a job with. Mr. Saunders will tell you that he spent most of the night July 19th with Josh. He'll tell you that they talked about their dogs over a few drinks and ended up staying at the establishment until 2 a.m. He'll tell you that Josh left after him and Josh was walking home from the bar. He'll tell you that he had never seen Josh be violent with Miss Eganbrot in any way. In fact, he'll tell you that the only person he ever witnessed be violent to Miss Eganbrot was her ex-husband, Chad Stone, who Mr. Saunders once witnessed punch Miss Eganbrot to the ground. The second witness we'll bring to you today is Mr. Pennington, who has extensive experience in the field of forensic cellular analysis. He will explain how cellular analysis works and how reliable the information from cellular data truly is. He'll also use the cellular data gathered from Josh's phone to show you where Josh was that night. He'll tell you very clearly that around 2 a.m., when Miss Eganbrot's house caught on fire, Josh was nowhere near her home. Mr. Pennington will tell you that at the time the fire was started, that Josh was nowhere near her home. And so today the prosecution explained a little bit about their burden. And their burden in today's case is a heavy burden because the prosecution must prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. The case, in their case, is that Josh is capable of arson, or Josh committed arson and murder. And they'll try to prove this to you using three methods. First, they'll use witness testimony, where we expect they will not be able to present a single person that can place Josh even near Miss Eganbrot's home around 2 a.m. that night. Second, they will attempt to use expert testimony, where no expert they will be able to present will be able to place Josh at the scene through any means of investigation. And finally, they'll use physical evidence, or they'll try, because as we expect, they simply will not have any to produce. No DNA, no fingerprints, and no proof that Josh committed this crime. And if at the end of this case you have one single doubt that Josh Wallace did not commit this crime, any doubt or any suspicion about the lack of proof or the utter lack of substantial evidence, you must find for the defense. Members of the jury, you have a very important job today. The state has told you that they think this case is open and shut, but it's not. And it's your job to look at all the evidence, weigh the testimony, and make decisions. You must look for the blanks that the prosecution will simply not be able to fill, no matter how hard they try. Look to the impossibility of a person to be in two places at one time. And finally, you must look to the utter lack of evidence or proof that the prosecution will try to gloss over. And when it's time for you to consider what has been presented to you today, you will be left with many gaping holes in the prosecution's case. And when you find the facts of their case are few and far between, all you are left with is reasonable doubt. And at the end of today's case, we are confident that you will recognize that doubt and you will return with a verdict in favor of the defense. Thank you.
State, call your first witness.